I often speak about how kites captured my imagination at an early age, and I have my dad to thank for that. He found kites on his honeymoon, and from there, I got hooked, and by 5, I was competing in sport kites. Kites have been part of my entire life. Today, my guest can pretty much say the same. He found kites at a very early age and was competing in the early 90s like me. He was a national champion, a founder of one of the first internet kite magazines, um, one of the more influential flyers, if not the most influential flyer of a generation. My name is Jesse. Today on the Pilots Meeting, we are catching up with John Barresi. John Barresi, welcome to the Pilots Meeting.
All right. Thank you very much, Jesse. Good to be here.
So, the premise of the podcast has been history and stories, trying to capture some of that. And I mean, you and I started competing pretty close to the same year, so there's a lot of history and a lot of stories. I guess we start at the beginning with, where did kites find you? How did you find kites?
Well, I was living kind of a nomadic lifestyle with my father most of my life. But when I was 15, I stumbled into somebody flying on the Marina Green in San Francisco. And later did I find out what they were actually flying was a Team Hawaiian, in classic San Francisco winds, 15 to 20 gusty. And for whatever reason, it really caught my interest. So I wandered out there and asked some questions as a young teenager. And, I don't remember a lot of detail except the fact that this person put the kite in my hands and the kite basically yanked me out of my skin and I went skidding down the field, crashed the kite. And the guy was really, really cool about it. But the exhilaration of feeling this thing raging at the end of the lines and getting dragged.
Sure.
I went back to the car and I was like, Dad, I need a kite. I need a kite. I need a kite. He didn't hear the end of it, until we went to the, I think there were 3 kite shops in the Bay Area at that point.
So, what year was that?
That would have been, let's see, August of 1990, because not like a month later, I stumbled into the very first kite festival I saw on the Marina Green in San Francisco.
Okay. So you've been kind of going through memory lane a little bit on social media recently. So you just posted something about your first competition wasn't that far after that.
No, and the one that I posted actually wasn't technically my first competition. The first competition that I was ever in was a small event that was done in Reno, Nevada, really in the off season. I want to say it was like January of 91, maybe.
Okay.
And I was flying, team with Craig Wong from Paragon Kites and Harvey Chang. I can't believe I remember that name. But it was amazing because there were actually like casinos sponsoring the event. There was $1,000 cash prize. It was kind of cool. Granted small, but it was really neat. And then,
Right.
and then the following was that. Then in April, I think it was. San Diego was my first one, California Open.
Very cool. So you were starting with dual line at this point, right?
I was dabbling in quad, but yeah, you could effectively say I was a dual line flyer at that point.
Because I mean, obviously, most people associate you as the quad guy, but I mean, you've been a dual line pilot just as long. I remember you in Masters Dual when I was still single digits, all over the place. Wildwood, making across the East Coast more than a few times.
Yeah, I've been flying dual line in the individual categories and the world level team categories since, the first time I rolled into that was '93 with Air Art, and then from there on.
Dude, so long ago. It's funny. It's like it's not that long ago, but it's so long ago.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
But I think especially, and you'll appreciate this, especially when you start as a youth and you
Right.
transition through a whole like scale of life. It's not like we started in our 30s and then
Right.
just continued being adults,
Yeah. No, I mean that's what it is you grow up doing it, and like it doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but then somehow I mean, I'm closing in on 40. You just passed
50.
50.
Mm.
So, yeah. So, let's talk about, so we're digging through the early competition. I guess we should probably talk about the routine that sort of became your signature globally, because it's not too far after this.
Hmm.
Um, Skinny Kid, Giant Quad, and Looney Tunes.
Yeah, 9 foot kite and like a 5 foot guy. Yeah, Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, Rabbit of Seville, just a classic track. Started off with that routine at the what was it, the New York Stunt Kite Championships in Uniondale, New York. That was
Yep.
end of '92, August of '92, um, and I surprisingly won. I'd been competing in quadline before that, but I didn't really have a record. But truth be told, I saw Eric Wolf from Chicago Fire at that
Mhm.
time. Fly to that song in Great Lakes,
Really?
in the preceding May,
Huh.
and so the way it was of course in the circuit, like how to say, if somebody was on a tear and they were chasing the circuit, then it was sort of universally understood that you respect a pilot's piece of music and it's sort of
Right.
hands off, right?
My dad and I,
And even it,
my dad and I always used to call it marking territory.
right, absolutely, and mostly it's just a conceded respect from the other flyers.
Yeah,
But
yeah, definitely.
when there's tracks that are in use, because there's only so much to use. Eric wasn't exactly chasing a quadline championship, so I rolled that into New York, and I won improvising it. But it's so expressive; it's just really easy to choreograph on the fly, so that worked really well. And I won at that event. I'm not going to say who, but I ended up beating the guy who'd been just killing it, flying to Blue Danube, if that rings a bell. And
It
he was
might, yeah.
hot, man. He was hot. He's like, you stole that music. I mean, but he was known to be a hot guy at the time. Since then, he's cooled off
Yeah.
a lot. We're actually really good friends. But moral of the story is, I called up Eric. I said, "What's up, man? I got this thing." He's yelling at me. He said, "No, man, just run with it. Go, 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 go." It's like, right on, thank you. So,
Yeah.
I just leaned into that music, and unlike a lot of routines of its kind, it actually wrote itself over the
Mhm.
years. So the very first time I flew it, there were maybe 4 or 5 spots that I knew what I was going to do, a bounce, dynamic expression. And then every time I flew it, and I never mind demos, I have competed with that track. I don't know. It must be a couple of hundred times at this point.
I was going to
It
ask if
just
you had any idea how many times you've flown it.
Well, I've flown the routine itself. I mean, considering I've been to over 1,000 kite events in my career,
Hmm.
and I've done an average of 2 demos at most of them for,
Sure,
I
right.
mean, it just, let's just say well over 1,000 times I've flown that routine. Never mind practices and stuff, but I've never been a big
Right.
practicer at home. It just doesn't really work for me. But the moral of the story was that it just kept fleshing itself out. And then periodically, as a championship would come down the line, that I'd be entering into, or maybe a redefinition in some of the things that I've been doing, in terms of flight or tricks, things I've learned, then additional areas would redefine or flesh themselves out. But still, to this
Sure.
point, there's a section in the routine that is, it's kind of an optional toss out that I use as my freestyle space, particularly if there's light wind. It's the place I run a 360 to reset the field and start the process again, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen you
Bugs
do that,
Bunny's.
actually.
Yeah, and Bugs Bunny's just killer because it's so universally, I don't know if it's
It's
beloved
a
anymore by
very
the kids, but they
ubiquitous
all know it.
character. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I've got a weird question related to that then. So how many
Mm.
different kites have you flown the Rabbit with? Because it was a Rev 1 originally.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, the Rev One originally, a Sedgwick series specifically. As soon as that was available, I never really went with anything else.
Mhm.
And then I flew the Rev One until 2005, when me and Hathaway went to World Championships in
Okay.
France. That's another discussion. The beginning of iQuad and all that. But it was also actually at that same event. He said, "Hey, we're going to need some 1.5." So we bought some SLEs, and we flew the
Wait, the
SLE all the
SLE,
way.
when did the SLE come out? Because the 1.5's what, 97 or 8?
Yeah,
And so
I
I
don't
think
know because I was hands off the
SLEs were like
SLE.
99-ish, I think. I think I
Hmm.
got my first set from Muncie in 99. They
Okay.
were hideous. They were gold, purple, and teal.
Mm. But first thing we did was we dumped the SLE rods, the
Yep.
stiff bone
Yeah.
rod, and went down to the 1/4 inch rods, and that made a big difference. But yeah, I started on the SLE in 2005. Never went back to the Rev One, and then of course the B series rolled out in 2008, and so on.
Somewhere there. Yep. Yep. And then obviously the gin.
Yeah, yeah. Gin 2018.
And do you ever fly it on a Zen?
No, Bugs Bunny on the Zen, no, because it's the kite just simply wasn't nimble enough. It wasn't designed for that sort of flying.
Sure.
And
Fair
also
enough.
the style of flyer that I would rather drag basically put the added oomph to make a more nimble kite work in lighter wind that other people might lean into more sail or lighter.
Sure. Sure. Um, so I guess we just sort of did a history of you and quad timeline inadvertently there. So all that time you're flying the one, you're Rev sponsored,
Mm.
and somewhere in there you said 2005 ish, you get 1.5s, you're going to Worlds, and team flying is sort of on your radar at any rate again.
Yeah, it never really been on the radar for team. Like I know like Scott Weeder did that stuff with a group of people out on on the East Coast, but I had never really been party to it. Oh, and Team High Performance, like 92, 93, 94, they were flying also quad line team. And that was super awesome, but it
The
wasn't like
around through the 90s and some other
yeah, absolutely. They didn't make much of an appearance in the US, so we didn't get a lot
no,
of exposure to them. And of course, it was all pre-YouTube, so video was a little
right. Yeah.
scarce.
I
Um,
think I first saw him on a VHS that somebody had brought back.
mm, yeah, but I think that the quad team certainly, I think for the majority of its time up until the late 2000s, really, I think it was kind of moving art based. It wasn't quite like dynamic
Mm,
team construct like competition style routines, with really
sure.
fine choreography. I think it was more I say ambiance and visual display sort of focus. And that was our first taste when we went to Berks Air. So I was drafted to be a judge at the 2006 World Championships in Berks Air. Cold and bloody rainy, but
Yeah.
going on that trip,
As
of
is
course,
Burke's way.
it can be absolutely. So, of course, at the time, I'm also running Kite Life magazine. We were still publishing,
Yeah, we'll
and
definitely circle back and talk about that in a
mm.
minute. Yeah,
But the connection there was that Dave Hathaway goes on the circuit by the name Monkey.
yeah.
We're dear friends already at this point, and he went along and joined me to capture video of all the performances as
Okay.
well. And so that's where that connected was. Is since he's coming along, we're rooming together. He says, "Hey, bring the 1.5," and he says, "Bring 120-foot lines." I was like, what? Like we never, we don't really fly in
Massive,
more than
right?
75, 85 feet
Right,
maybe.
right.
And so, yeah, so that was the other transition was going to 120 feet out there. But then we got a taste of that playing with Stephen Hoth was one of the capital callers up there.
Hmm.
Let's see who else. It was Ben from Flick. I don't remember his last name, and
Hmm.
I think there might have been one or two other players at the time, but they were the primaries that I
Sure.
can recall, and just getting that experience of being able to put that many kites up and utilize the unique qualities of a quad. That was
Right.
super exciting, and it set off a just an absolute blaze for us when we came back to the U.S.
For sure. For sure. So is that directly into the founding of iQuad then?
Absolutely. Yeah. We came back from that, and I'd be surprised if it was more than a week later. We grabbed
Mm,
our two nearest friends. At that time, it was Todd Rudolph. He was out of the Portland area near me, and
mhm.
Egan Davis out of Canada, another
Okay.
excellent dual line flyer. And one of the funny things is these first floor flyers. two of them, Egan and Todd, they didn't really fly a whole lot of quad. Egan flew a little bit of indoor quad, and even Hathaway at that point, although he'd been publishing an online like newsletter email kind of thing for quads and distributing the
Hmm.
information, he'd never really had a scenario that set him up to like focus that and crisp these
Sure.
skills. He enjoyed it and he knew a lot about it and he helped other people enjoy it more. But me and him going to Burke and then coming back and then going, hey, we got to fly team. Now we're learning to invert. Now we're really learning to stick those hovers and all that kind of stuff. And it
Sure.
was just
Sure.
amazing bringing all that together, the four of us. And every event at that point, we're doing a lot of events, maybe 12 to 20 a year, like pretty much anything we can get to. And we just learned and played, lots of what we call twin radars. I mean, it just, and a lot of
Right.
balls and bursts. It wasn't super complex, but man, did we ever have a lot of fun.
So iQuad grows. You guys are you're on a world tour. How many events do you guys get into a year? Like
Well,
at
I think, yeah, it's kind of a big leap. I'm going to fill in the middle a little bit in saying
sure.
that, um, so we started with that core four. And I mean, there's a kind of an important jump here is that 2005 at the Washington State International Kite Festival, I'm going to guess that there were probably maybe, I mean, if you just did like a meerkat and looked around, you'd probably see
Sure.
maybe five quads up in the air at any given time and in scattered locations, and two of them in the Learn to Fly field for Rev.
Sure. That's
2006, end of that
pretty
year,
small and isolated at that point still.
oh,
Like
completely, completely. But
yeah, yeah,
bringing
yeah.
back that energy and basically like wedging ourselves into a little corner at Whiskiff. I think by the end of Whiskiff, we were pushing 22 people in the same place, all on a line, starting to fly together. And we picked
Not
up
that many
Steve
years
DeRoy.
later, you guys broke the record there. So
Correct, correct. Yeah. And but it was the key point, what, and it's just I think there's a takeaway here is that of course, I'm I'm coming in with some experience in leading a team. I have a perspective that works really well for that role. But at the same time, we've got Monkey in the group, and then Steve DeRoy comes on board, and this is
sure.
really important. And I think what I found it's applicable to almost any part of kiting is, you know, we how many years have we been doing our thing? We're flying and it's a view it from the back thing. And maybe we turn around and say, hey, thanks for watching, or we answer a couple of questions. Not
Right.
Steve, man. We're flying, and then we land. And, you know, and you get a couple of claps. And Steve turned around, he looked at the crowd and he go, we want more. I mean, he basically reached out. He said, you are not going to be passive spectators. We love you. You love us. Isn't that cool? Wouldn't you like to try it too? It's just this amazing vibration that came out of him. So that energy really steamrolled and we just picked up flyers and picked up flyers and picked up flyers. And because we didn't have any real filter on, like, are you good enough? Are you not? You got something with four lines? Let's go, man. And we'll figure it out as we go along, and grins all the way and the energy of the
Right.
people that were involved. So that right there at that point, 2007, we went to Wildwood.
Hmm.
And that was me, Monkey, Todd Rudolph, and DeRoy. And there's a video, you can look it up. It's iQuad Broken Wings is the name of that video. And
Hmm.
we were just like that was the moment we really became something. You could feel it. The engine was going all on its own. And we were sitting at the banquet. I'll never forget it. Was it Curtis? Curtis had edited that video there on site, recorded it on site, and displayed it up at the banquet. And I mean, I'd be amazed if one of us had dry eyes at the table. It was just like all we were doing was out there going wah with our kites, and it landed. It hit home, and to see that effect on people was really amazing. So what I'm going to say is right there, we'd already started and then really took off into, we were doing, God, we must have been doing 25 to 35 events a year, depending on the year. And sometimes we'd stay on the road for three events or
Right.
come home only long enough to put the suitcase down before we get back up and go.
That's it's funny. The Brett and I just did an episode and we were talking about how it turns into the traveling circus real fast around here.
Mm.
Couch from couch to couch and on and on.
Well, the nature of the community, there's so many amazing people and so many
Right.
different ways that we get to spin it. It's
Mm.
pretty cool that way. And I think we have also an advantage, unlike a lot of sports, in that you don't necessarily have to be the best one. You know, it's not like you're going to BMX and there's a
It's
long road to
participatory.
get into
Yeah.
that room. Yeah, yeah, you can get into the rooms with good spirit and a little effort. That really goes a long way. But
For
just to round out the number of events and the traveling scene that we were doing. Yeah, we had. I think we maxed out at 35 events in one year. I had, gosh, trying to remember. I don't even remember now, but I had some insane number of boarding passes, and I think we hit like 6 countries that year. But from the beginning in April of 2006 until the day that we closed the door. Oh no, until Borneo. Borneo was 2012. We did 100 events. 100 events in a pretty short number of years. It was kind of a
yeah.
meteoric travel. But one of the cool things about that too was just the intensity of experience that we had. It was like, if we're here's an event, we've got kites in our hands while we're waiting at the bus station, and when we stop at the rest areas, and when we
Right.
wake up at the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we are flying, flying, flying any which way you could swing it. And the nature of the people that I was able to be around, it was just pretty cool. We were developing kind of our own way of doing it real fast.
For sure. And I think that coupled with it's like it was really a right place, right time because this is happening. We're getting the rise of YouTube, like like you said before. Well, the decks didn't make it here, and video on the internet wasn't a thing yet. Well, now video on the internet is a thing, and cell phone cameras are, and GoPros and reasonable video cameras aren't thousands of dollars, and it's not super expensive to produce. And so suddenly, not only are you guys making it to all these events, but you guys start pumping out some content at a time when nobody's really thinking about making content.
Hmm.
I went away from flying 2004-ish for a bit, 4 or 5, and then came back around 2010. And when I came back, it went from, like you said, there's a handful of quads scattered up and down the beach to there's 5 people, 5 groups of people flying team scattered up and down the beach.
Hmm.
And I think the first time I bumped back into you might have been that Wildwood convention right in there. And I think we had like 49 people on a grid.
Hmm.
And I was just I knew what people had gone to 120. I made a set of 120s up before coming. And I was just like, it's such a totally different way of flying from what I've been doing my whole life. And boy, oh boy, had I missed it. Like you said, it was a really short amount of time, but it was a lot of development, both for you guys for iQuad, but also for the quad community as a whole, driven
Yeah,
by what you guys were doing, and then what people that patterned after you.
I maybe some people think I'm speaking out of turn, but I'm really passionate about the fact that we and I mean that as the collective we first
Mm-hmm.
the people that I was on the team with, and then the people that became connected to that and the people that became there was an exponential culture that was natural and just I think just quickly became like universal currency,
Mm-hmm.
like dual line. I think just now we're starting to get more of a like an interchange, like not so much gunslingers in the Wild West. There's now you guys
Yeah.
are actually talking and sharing information, and hopefully we'll see that translating into more tutorials and things going in the future. But the thing
Fingers
about
crossed.
Quad was, yeah, Quad for how many years, and you'll appreciate this as a competitor. It's like in terms of the adjustment knots on the top of the handles,
Right.
even that you just say like loosely a handful of people around the world knew about that or even understood it, and the rest of the world is still flying with way too much gas and not being able to control the kite. So
Right.
I think that was one of the biggest things, was creating a culture where that information could transmit, and as you said, being able to be online and produce tutorials and that kind of thing. We just saw a lot more hands-on and hand-to-hand distribution of experience and information.
Well, and it's funny you say that, the distribution of experience information, because we're going to jump back in time here, because you started distributing experience and information with Kite Life, the magazine, the blog, whatever format at whatever time, was that like 2000 ish?
Yeah. So, well, I have to give a heartfelt nod first and acknowledge that Kite Life was started by Mike Allard. It was a former team member of
Really?
mine on Capnetti's Flying Circus.
I didn't know Mike
Um,
started. No
hmm
way.
Yeah,
Huh.
absolutely. So he and
Okay.
I, of course, we flew in 96, 97 together on Capnetti's,
Yep.
went on a championship tour with the team around the country. And
Yep.
then when I left the Ohio area where I've been living for a couple of years in 98, he started Kite Life. And that
Okay.
was, it was 98 was the end, basically the end point, loosely speaking, for Kite Lines and American Kite Magazine, both.
Right.
And
Right.
also a lot of atrophy to, I mean, basically the American Kite circuit went away. So there was a lot of
Yep.
change and a lot of loss.
Yeah,
And
I
for people
don't
like,
think people even really remember that there were two like forgetting the regional championships and circuits. There was the AKA and the American Kite magazine circuit
mhm.
back
Yeah, it's,
back in the day.
well, and it was hot too because
Yeah.
you show up at the hotel for an event, and I mean people were still, if you lived in California you had to go to New York for your points, and if you lived in New York you had to
Right.
go to California for your points, and it was a hot battle, and it was really it was like a kind of a Hollywood feel. You walk in, you go, oh, it's Scott Augenbaugh. Oh shit, it's on now, right? Like this is
Yep.
really fun, but serious energy, and I
Mm-hmm.
think because everything was so competition based. The
Mm.
the focus of the skills, the applied knowledge, not just
Yep.
being a good flyer, but how to point that skill somewhere and do something really exacting with it was just amazing. And we got sidetracked there. There was something about that, the American Kite Circuit. Oh, Kite Life.
Kite
I
Life.
have to keep my brain on train here.
No, I'm
So
with you.
yeah, so in 98, Mike started Kite Life, and then it was right about 2002, I think it was. It was not too long before the Dayton convention, Dayton, Ohio, aka
Okay.
convention. He'd taken over editorship of Kiting Magazine for the
Right.
AKA. And so now he's juggling two publications. And a lot of people don't know this, but right around that same time, for about 6 to 8 months, I had started up a website called SatoriKites.com.
Yep.
And what it was essentially a beginning database of competitors all around the world. My general goal at the time was to essentially be able to pull up a page on Jesse Capstan and have like a headshot and a couple of action shots. If there was any video link out there at all anywhere to some old like MOV, um,
Right.
and then
Right.
and an actual bio, little breakdown, like some of your highlights. The idea was to have a reference, not only for announcers and events and things like that to lean on, but my interest primarily was a celebration of the people that were out there doing it. Because unlike a lot of other sports, there's very little.
Yeah.
Very little record or anything
Well,
to convey how awesome it was. Now, is it really relevant today? That's a different question. But nonetheless, if you look at other sports, the
it's
people that put
still
in that time, that
history,
effort, it's
right?
honored. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Which, like seeing Nick O'Neill from SportKite.org,
Yep.
gathering all of those freaking scores from all over the world into a database. That's one of the very few times that anybody's done that sort of deep
Right.
archival service
Right.
to
And
the
it's been a
community.
hell of a project because like I
Mm.
came to find out pretty recently that the reason the scores dropped off the AKA website, they didn't take them off. They were hosted on somebody's personal computer and the computer died. There was no backup,
Okay.
right? Like
Yeah.
like when that stuff dies, the Eastern League records are gone because whoever had the last computer that had it, that computer died and is gone. Just, you
Yeah,
know.
and I mean that goes back into it too. Is that one of the things that's been tough for institutional memory is that because there is no like level of subsidy for kiting where that stuff gets
Right.
to go and be in Cooperstown or whatever, it's in the hands of individuals, and a lot of times they come and go, or some software database breaks and it's gone, never to return.
Yep. Yeah. So you take over Kite Life
Mm,
and added you add the forum
hmm
and the growth and tutorials and it became kind of one of the eminent kite forums globally.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Gone with the Wind was still the place to go and throw stuff around, if you will. It was hot, but with Kite Life, especially seeing Gone with the Wind in all of the glory that it was, and it's also somewhat innate to my nature, is like I really wanted to create a hard place where peacekeeping is in full effect,
Mm-hmm.
that was really eyes on the information and the exchange, and the as you say, the more timid people would not necessarily go running away because two people were throwing stones at each other, you know. So it was kind of a balance to everything else that was out there, and something a little bit more archival oriented, and exactly including a little bit of more rich media, which was one of the things. So I didn't own Kite Life until it was I want to say it was about 2003 or four. So I'd been on it for a couple of years. Mike had brought me in to do the management of the website,
Okay.
and I'd started to add the forum. I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see the more than just a magazine. And so I remember writing to Mike. I said, "Man, brother, you know, I can see this stuff, and I'm at a point now where if I continue to do this, I want to know that I'm putting it into my own bucket, my own,
Yeah.
I'm making it mine." And he went, "Fine," and he just dropped the keys and like basically, that's it. Here's Kite Life. It's yours, man. I got plenty to do. And unfortunately, we lost Mike not too terribly long after that.
Mm.
But yeah, he'd be super tickled to see everything that's going on to date.
No,
But
I'm sure.
yeah.
I think he really would be too. I think you're right. So so kite life. So I guess somewhere in here, kite life is going, iQuad is going, and because we're skipping back and forth in the timeline a little bit. But at some point, so you guys are flying 1.5s, and you guys decide you need a better 1.5, and off you and Baz are trotted.
Yeah, well, it actually started earlier than that. Revolution had brought in Ben D'Antonio. I
Mm-hmm.
believe he was in the title of GM, but in one way or another, he was on the floor. And one of the things about Ben, for anybody that didn't know him, was he was really a wheeler and dealer, full of as much intelligence as he was full of BS. He was just he was a hustler all day long with a heart
Oh
of
yeah.
gold, and he was on the field with us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the first project that he brought in was the Masterpiece series. We saw it, like
Yeah.
Ron Gibeon. I think Ron Gibeon was the first one to do an art piece for Rev.
Yep.
And it was right around that time, not long after, Ben's like, "So, John, like, let's do this, because there's already been a Sedgwick series." He said, let's do a B series." And so I sent him some ideas for paneling, and believe it or not, the first B series actually had curved stripes on it, not straight stripes. But
Uh,
the factory didn't want to sew curves, and so that was it. We just put with the B series, really, we just put a tiny bit more curve in the leading edge, made sure they were on the quarter-inch rods that were more
yep.
flexible, and then really leaned into the tuning and education. That's where the tutorials started coming in full effect. Was producing for that.
Right.
But with all of the events that iQuad was going to, the sheer number of hours that we were flying. So you figure, coming to Whiskiff, that certainly, that it was that first year and the second year especially, we were flying like
Mm-hmm.
10 hours a day,
Right.
sometimes into the night as well, for 5-6 days in a row. You're talking putting in 70 to 90 hours over the course of a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so these sails are getting burnt, and we don't stop for the rain. We don't stop for the wind. So the
Right.
kites are getting abused, far and beyond a
And
normal
they're
use case.
just ripstop nylon sails still at that point, right? So like
Correct.
they just stretching and wearing and blowing out.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to have some poly at that point, but even that wasn't a correct. But yeah, the,
Right.
the sails were wearing out fast, and that was really what it came down to, is that for a use case like ours, the hardcore flyers that are going a little further than is recommended on the package, Bazzer went home and basically retooled a B series and called it the B Series Pro. So
Right.
functionally the same design, but Bazzer Poulter, of course, as a master kite maker, glued to
Yep.
the blue, kites by Bazzer. He just did all the solid reinforcement. I mean, stuff under the hood that you wouldn't even normally consider, and he rolled those out. And the B series, I think, was already probably the most like commonly seen kite at an event for the most part, almost all over
Yeah,
the world. And then when that B series Pro came in, man, that held an absolute point of I think trust
boy, it had
and
a
popularity.
stranglehold. It had a stranglehold for a while.
mm, mm. Well, it's,
Probably until the gin.
yeah, well, I mean, I think there was a period there because kiting is it goes up and down. I mean, dog steak is the new old new again, right? I mean,
Well,
it's
I think you
all
had something to do with that, but
well, I know, but the point stands, and anybody could do the same with any facet of it. You just have to have that right.
yeah,
You say critical mass at the right moment between the right people and the right things. So I think quad flying had already started to hit its initial backside of that hump right around 2012. You could just start to smell it. By 2013, 2014, you could really start to see the decline. And of course, iQuad had we'd retired our team in 2013, September 2013. So that contributed as well, so we weren't on the circuit just absolutely giving ourselves to
the
it.
visibility changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, visibility changed, and with kiting, it's really hard to maintain our institutional memory.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah,
because we have such turnover on people that come and go, because they come and they enjoy it for a certain amount of time and then they're gone. But like,
new hobbies or other things.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, there's a bit of an attrition, and I don't know, we're kind of, but then we did 101 in 2019. But I think we were really digging into the bottom of the barrels to put that together. I don't mean that in terms of a low class of flyer, but I mean really reaching out deep into the community for the
Yeah,
people that were still
yeah,
active
yeah,
enough and interested enough.
yeah. Well, and I mean, sport kiting in the U.S. was also like kind of on life support by that point, anyways. Like COVID put a nail
Yep.
in that, but which is funny because it put a nail in it and it also restarted it in a lot of ways. But
Nature abhors a
like
vacuum.
yeah, right. But but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not unfair to say you guys had to sort of drag a net to find 101 pilots, I think.
Yeah.
Um but so iQuad hangs it up in 13.
hmm
When does Team Kite Life become a thing?
I I'm so bad on timelines, but I'm gonna, with some confidence, I'm gonna say that was 2015, because just like
Okay.
your recent interview with Brett, it was 2014. I was on the tour around the country. I hooked up with him,
Right.
and quickly went on a bit of a rampage. And then by 2015, I grabbed him and Eli and Scott Benz, all dear friends,
Hmm.
and that's when we started that. And one of the things that I'm inspired to sort of share is that iQuad came together really as a critical mass. It was just it was those of us that knew each other and liked each other well enough and enjoyed the pastime enough that we just wanted to do it more and see what it became,
Sure.
and we were just kind of along for the ride. So I think all of the everything that iQuad developed into
Hmm.
it that was a kind of an organic process. It just happened because we liked being there. And then Team Kite Life, that was kind of a different platform because, of course, I've been doing clinics and workshops since 2005. I do
Right.
private instruction throughout the course of the year. I do team workshops. I do things called squad clinics, where I'm working with small groups and basically in a weekend trying to train them in the same way that I would have my own team fly. So in
Sure.
the course of that, I've had the pleasure and the ability to spend time with a lot of flyers, and everybody who's basically come into the Team Kite Life circle are people that I've gotten to know firsthand through that. So they're people that have,
Right.
first of all, demonstrated an interest in like actual syllabus, like actual curriculum, like actual, and not my way specifically, because the way that we treat instruction is
No,
more
but
like a
I know what you mean.
campfire.
Yeah,
Yeah. But that was it. And so Eli and Scott and Brett and me, the difference with Team Kite Life was we came together and we really wanted to carry that forward and continue to refine our application and our skill and the way that we do things and the way that we write routines.
sure. And I mean, you guys have definitely sort of put a mark because not quite as well traveled as iQuad, but sort of reappeared across the U.S. in the recent years for sure.
We've had a few hits. I think for in the early days it was real strong in the beginning of Team Kite Life, and then
Mhm.
I think in the recent years we've transitioned into a number of us have had other things going on in life, or we have
Sure.
geographical distance. That's one of the
Is a
challenges.
let's say it is a pretty spread out group.
But like even now, we have the opportunity of we could go to an event for 3 days and
Right.
be pew 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 all over the place, or we can meet here in Long Beach for 3 days
Right.
and do nothing but fly for ourselves together and completely dedicate ourselves. So now I think there's some interest in that balance too. After a while, like okay, we're doing another demo, but for what? What
Right.
if the event is well supported and they already have a good show, we don't necessarily need to go get our jollies. It's not for us, right?
Right.
So we like going and working our craft.
Fair enough. So again, we're jumping back and forth, which is totally fine. So in
That's the way it
between
is in my
those
head too.
squirrel,
Hmm.
um, so somewhere in here, it was time for a new kite, and you called Brett, and you guys started making the first really weird one, and then ultimately the gin.
Yeah. Well, it was right around end of 2015. I knew that I wanted to take all of the collective experience that I'd had since the beginning of iQuad,
Hmm.
which again, remember, it was near the beginning of the B series. All of that time, all that history, we're basically riding the same kite for
Yeah,
9 years. 9 years,
the
we're flying
limit
the
to how much
same
you
bloody
can
kite.
change it because Rev obviously
Ex-
has their patent and their shape, and
Yeah, well,
that's
I mean, the patent was moved, so that's not the primary
fair
discussion.
enough.
But the key being is that I wanted to first of all, I just took a break. 2014, I needed a reset, so that's why I went on the road. And then 2015 came back. I'm figuring out what's what, and
Sure.
I wanted to essentially take everything that I'd gathered and apply it into something, and that had the confluence with meeting Brett, and indeed we just started working on all different stuff and seeing what we could do with it. But I think most of what's gone into that is at a more sophisticated level.
Hmm.
So, and I know Brett spoke some about it's the sculpting. I think what he didn't get into too much was the bridle. The bridle dynamic on the kite is
No,
vastly
and
different, and there's this tremendous
the
synergy
sync
between
bridle,
the
yeah, is very
yeah,
much
yeah.
the thing
Well, and the
and
materials and
part of the
the way the
kite.
seams run. Absolutely. So it's more of a homogeneous thing as opposed to a flat shape and then something to hold on to it with and bars that go through it, which, there's a lot of stuff in there. We really
Sure.
tend to kind of look at it in a much more three-dimensional sense, particularly as hard flyers. And so one of the things that I would offer there is we're drivers and mechanics in our ways, as opposed to having
Yeah.
somebody in an office that they know about kites, but they don't actually live on that field day in day out. Both are valuable parts of the community, but the
Sure.
difference in the way those two things operate will always be different.
Sure. And well, and technology progresses and understanding progresses, and
Mm,
25 years of intervening knowledge like is going to change some understanding and some objectives.
mm,
Because I mean, the B series was a progression, but it was a limited progression because, like you said, there was so far you could get in the box.
mm.
The gin, the gin is genuine progression. I mean,
Yeah, well,
you
and
we were
I
talking
don't
about the
want to
rabbit
corner that.
earlier.
Yeah,
No, but I mean,
yeah,
we were
but
talking about the rabbit earlier, and you look at
mm,
video of the rabbit in the 2010 window on a B series, video of you doing the rabbit on the gin, and there's several additional things you're doing now that you wouldn't have didn't do on the previous kite.
Yeah, no,
And
absolutely. And
that's enabled by the evolution, by the fact that the kite's not flat, and the sync bridle, and the adjustability of the bridle, not just the handles, but the bridle itself.
yeah, well, quad's essentially been living on a standard French or turbo bridle, and then the classic quad bridle that's been on the kites for years.
Right.
But like another departure is because again we're talking about this tipping point and hardcore users. Stefan Verstig on the Detox,
Mm-hmm.
his kite. I mean,
Wonderful
his
kite.
yeah, well, and his kite swept the last world championship, right?
Swept
So that's
Worlds in
not a
China.
mistake
Yep.
there. hmm Now, the difference between kites, you get one range that's more leading edge driven, and then
Mm-hmm.
one that's more belly driven. They're just different animals. They function different ways, different kinds of pilots. But that the tip I wanted to give is that he's also done things with shifting the proportion of the sail, that classic shape.
Yep.
He's got a
Yep.
semi original bridle on there. He's done some weird things with the fabric and so that's the distinction. And one of the important things that I want to point out is that I think from the beginning, from 1988, well, let's say 89, 90, when people finally figure out how to fly the damn things, all the way up to say 2005, 2006, flying didn't change that much. If you go and look at the championship videos, I mean, you'll see a little bit of increase in the complexity, slightly more reverse, but not a great deal. And so if you look at one of the things that always gives me a little bit of humor is that if you look at the national champions for individual quad line flying from 2003, 2004, and
Right.
then you look at video of intermediate pilots 5 to 6 years later, you're going to see them almost on the same scale. So
Mm-hmm.
it was right. It was actually 2006 into 2010. All of a sudden, the universal level of flying increased so rapidly, and people were looking at the kite itself at such a deeper level than they ever had been before that it just changed the face of everybody's flying. We were all
For
on that
sure.
ride.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it's interesting that time frame. It's dual line and quad just go through this monster like progression rate, because that's that window I missed. I go away, I come back, and it went from like some like the foundational slackline stuff to everybody's got a Comet in Masters or you're not there,
Mm.
and like I had whiplash
I
coming
think that
back.
was
Like,
98 to 2005 was where I saw that transition happen the most in dual line. With
yeah,
was it the French invasion when Mathieu Maillet and Richard Debray come over to Wildwood, and I mean it's
yep,
just knocked everybody on their butts, and that set off the whole tone with Graziano and Tinkham and that
yep.
whole East Coast crew being able to import that experience and that approach to kite flying, and then we saw Trix Party come in, but again, where's Trix Party now? It's it's
Yeah,
tough to keep it going.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I wish if I had answers, I'd have solutions. To,
You're telling
but
me I live here. I live in this
I
world,
know
man,
you
like
do,
day
man.
in,
I
day
know.
out. And a little bit of
Well, and
CPR, you know?
well, and that kind of feeds into your new project, right? With you're sort of taking tackling coaching for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was on Valentine's Day. A love of labor. I opened up flywithintent.com. It's a play on an article that I wrote. I don't know, 10 years ago. It's having to do essentially with an ideology or methodology for considering the way that one flies. And I'm going to preface this first by saying, remember that I'm an instructor like full time. As I'm one of
Hmm.
maybe two or three people historically who have done this for more than a decade or two, and
Hmm.
so developing an entire syllabus and vocabulary and understanding of a lot of the fine things that go on. One of the things that I'm faced with is that kiting is chronically engaged as a recreational pastime, as a toy pastime. So one of the things that would be so the lessons that I give, I typically suggest no less than 2 days. If they're coming here, 2 days, that's 6 hours and then
Mm-hmm.
another 6 hours. And a lot of times people will be like, well, how much could I learn in 6 hours? And with,
A lot.
yeah, okay, for sure. And I think what a lot of people don't perceive is that, and first of all, I want to say that I have love and regard for just enjoying it,
Mm-hmm.
but I've also had the opportunity to participate in and be part of developing a lot of the definition of how things can be done really well. So, flying with intent is mostly built to expand the conceptual sight, being able to see the room that you're in, the difference between flying a kite and then seeing a wind window that you're flying in,
Right.
the difference between seeing a wind window and then seeing the way that window is divided and how the shapes that you fly can overlap on them,
Mm-hmm.
seeing how each of those overlap points on the ground provide you with different levels of landing, ease of landing.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, that's the idea, is that you start fleshing out this room more and more. So it's not constriction. It's not like practice, iteration, constraint. It's really just about thumbing through the books until you go, oh, crap. Like it went from being a cup of coffee to like what good beans are and how it's pressed.
Right.
And, it really takes on an added quality. So with Fly with Intent, I'm doing online coaching, which I've done sporadically over the years. That's been going really, really well. So I'll have students submit YouTube video, unlisted videos where I can
Mm-hmm.
actually see their body movement and the kite movement. And then again, because of the vocabulary that I've been able to develop with a lot of help from the people that have been a part of my clinics for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
being able to provide actual feedback. And then we're also doing one-to-one video coaching as well, where I can either observe the pilot in real time and they're on a Bluetooth headset, or we're just rapping back and forth and really able to convey and interview more. And one of the things that I think also I want to make sure is conveyed really well is that I don't have a vision of what that looks like, what that arrival point is.
Mm.
What I'm looking for is, it's like you find a stone. So you meet this flyer, and we're really looking for who they are. So I feel more like an archaeologist, if anything, where I'm going through with a brush and just tapping the side. Go, is that real? Is that real? Is that real? Until you find out what kind of a flyer they are, what kind of a flyer they like
Sure.
to be,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you've introduced things they might not have considered. And some they'll discard, some they'll go, oh, you know what? I really do like that. And then the idea is just bolstering that. And so the great part too is that we're able to actually archive the meetings, all the information. Each student in Fly with Intent has their own private student studio where they can go and access all of the exchange and all the information that they've gained
Mm-hmm.
through that whole time. And then also inside there, we've already done a webinar on choreography, routine choreography. I'm currently working on the next webinar, which is going to be team leading,
Okay.
which covers a whole bunch of different dynamics. And
Sure.
again, much like everything I've talked about, the webinars, they're designed around what somebody can just walk in, hear, walk out and use and just apply with their friends down
Sure.
at the field.
Sure.
But then there's also a greater emanation around that into, particularly with team leading. It's going to be very interesting because there's, when I'm leading, I've led 101 pilots in however many
Wow.
languages, and half of
Right.
them don't care in that moment. They just want to get off the damn line and imagine what's going on in my head, right? Or leading a team for the first time, standing there with iQuad. So there's a lot of psychology
Right.
and a lot of
Sure. Yeah.
detail
Yeah.
that really goes into it. So anyway, Fly with Intent, and then all the tutorials, of course, both past and future, are going to be. They're already in the process of archival there, and the new ones are coming down the line, hopefully this year, along with some flight exercises, that kind of thing. So anyway,
Oh, cool.
you asked the question, and the idea for me was just to put it really into one place where it could be, I don't know, more individualized and more useful to the
Sure.
people that choose to take a bite out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like the idea of something a little more personalized being out there for sure.
Hmm.
So as we're kind of coming up on the hour mark here, I guess I got one last area that I'd love to jump backwards a little bit on, but we don't have to if you don't want to. Want to talk about
Go.
your dual line kites?
Dual line kites. Yeah, sure. Well, let's.
Because the gin and the juice definitely take the front seat, but like the kaiju's
Mhm.
still there, and it wasn't the first dual line kite either.
Sure. Well, I mean, and I'll make this super concise in that, I mean, I came up through the Interceptor from Paragon Kites,
Yep.
California Wasp. My first big love was the Tracer, Skyward Kites,
Awesome
Mike
kite.
Simmons.
Yep.
Fantastic freaking kites. So precise, amazing. And so I flew that Tracer for a long time. Then I ended up on an Air Effects, by Ken McNeil,
Yep.
Airy Kite
Very
Works,
tight
now Blue Moon
works.
Kites.
Yep.
I mean, I've had the opportunity to fly a lot of great kites over the years, and
Hmm.
never really got into that on my side. But as I did the B series with Rev, I had the opportunity to do a dual line kite with Into the Wind,
Hmm.
called the Chimera. Really targeted to be a blend of old school, new school. I think they were about $200, maybe 220,
Yeah, something around
and
there, if I remember.
no, yeah, and then right at the time they were being phased out, they were going out the door for like $99 for like
Which
a
is
full
such a
size kite.
steal. Yeah, such a
You know,
steal
and,
for
and
what it
there's a
was.
killer video. There's a killer video on YouTube with it. It's I think it's a Chimera in Seaside or something like that. But it's
Yeah.
a pretty amazing little kite for $200. So that happened, and then the Kaiju, leaping way forward.
Hmm.
The Kaiju really, and this again by Kite Forge, my own company.
Hmm.
It's an indoor urban kite, and it was predominantly designed, to be quite honest, around the rodeo style, which is where you've got the lines controlled by one hand, and then you're essentially dog staking the thing off your other hand and flying it around. So the rodeo, pardon me, the kaiju is really engineered for that. It's a simple
Hmm.
kite. If you put it out at the end of 30 feet and you try to do something, it's
So,
straightforward. It's a simple little kite. There's
yep.
nothing super amazing or tricky about it, but it flies. That's its
Yeah.
job. And then
Yeah.
when you're going around like this, you sure want that kite to fly, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Think you'll ever do
And
another dual line?
I would very much like to, being on the table, frankly, with the way that my head functions, not really my bag. I just don't, the process orientation. I'm a driver. I know what the parts are, what they should look like, same way I designed my
Hmm.
bridle. I didn't engineer that crap. I literally, on the gin, I held the strings up until 30 years, of kite flyer, could
Hmm.
smell it and go, that's it. Yeah, now the thing looks right. And then go out and beat it up and then tear it up some more again, right? So the same idea.
Right.
But dual line, a little bit more of a challenge. And again, I just don't want to roll fabric out on a table. So usually I like to do collaborative work.
Sure.
And like right now, the kites that I'm flying the most, the object,
And
from Josh Mitchison
you've been
and
flying
Lime Hawk.
Object and Avatar.
Yeah, and Avatar. I'm flying the crap out of some Avatars, man. I love the Avatar because it has that real purity of engine.
Hmm.
Incredibly precise, snap lands,
And
the controls excellent.
surprisingly underrated. It's not gonna be a modern trick kite, but
Mm.
what it does is so damn graceful.
I think it will show a trick flyer if they actually are a trick flyer or if they know how to
Yes.
slap a kite.
Yep.
If you
Yeah,
actually know how to
absolutely.
do tricks, you'll be able to. I always think of it like a manual transmission
Hmm.
as opposed to
There's
an
a certain
automatic
amount of
transmission.
yeah, there's a certain amount of finesse required to get that big thing to come around and do things.
Exactly, exactly. So, and I think that there's a real shortage of dual line kites like that in the world. And I've been really excited to see this sort of renaissance where, I mean, there are lots of people in the U.S. and I think some in
Hmm.
Canada as well buying avatars, which I think it's the Pro Dancer SUL and the
Hmm.
Avatar are like two of the oldest still currently commercially produced kites around. I know there's some others, but those are two that stand out because the
No,
Avatar's
I
been
think
around for 20 years. Easy.
yeah. Well, and it indirectly traces lineage to the blackbird. So
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
could make an argument that
Yasu
if you
Namata.
start with the Blackbird one, yeah, it's probably darn close. It's that, and like you said, Pro Dancer
Hmm.
are probably the
But
two longest. Yeah.
and the common denominator with these kites is constant and absolute sail pressure.
Yep.
Whereas a lot of dual line kites, when you just crack a corner, you actually feel the pressure load on the kite break and then
Hmm.
reestablish itself. Whereas I think on a really good
Right.
pressure point kite, that's usually ideal for precision and team flying, you just have this constance of connection with the kite throughout
Right.
almost everything that you're doing, and at the same time, still gives you a really good stall break point on the lines.
Sure. Yeah. No, definitely. I think it's a
Mm.
really, really good point, actually.
And just because I love shouting out, the other kite that I'm really missing that I want is I want a mask or a V mask, anything in that range. Another one of
Uh,
my favorite
I
kites.
have a V mask, and it is
Uh,
one of my like. I sweet talked Remlel into making me a Ruben V mask a couple years ago.
okay, got that
Uh,
that elusive Reuben.
yeah, he's got a little bit left, and
Hmm.
I was able to coax some out of him for that, and for the set of fulcrums I ended up with, and yeah, that V mask is just a joy. I like. I mean, the full mask is wonderful. The UL mask is one of the most incredible kites, like maybe ever made. But the
Hmm.
V mask being just a little smaller, just gets a little more aggression.
A little
That
bit more
like,
nimble.
yeah, yeah, it's just a bit more energy there. And boy, oh boy, I've never flown. I'd love to fly an X mask, the baby.
Hmm. Hmm.
I've always been a little curious about that kite. But
Mm.
yeah, no, mask is a delightful time.
And good variable venting options too, which you don't
Yes.
find in a lot of
Yeah,
dual
yeah.
line kites. Hmm.
Yep. Well, I think a lot of them didn't work well. I've
Hmm.
always variable venting is a very hit or miss concept. Um, Remlel's always done it really well. Not everybody has.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I think vented dual line kites in general have a reputation for being really crappy. They
Yeah.
tends to kill what a dual line is, and like you
Yeah.
said, taking the right slices out of that pressure zone and not compromising the engine is it's a challenge. It's a engineering hurdle for sure.
Very well. I mean, it took how long did it take him to get the second the more vented Avatar out?
Hmm.
It's like a decade between the VT1 and the VT2.
And I have the entire suite. I have all four avatars, and they all fly freaking amazing in the wind that they're chosen for. Like I don't feel like I'm flying a vented kite when I go to the vented kites.
So can I tell you my while we're down this rabbit hole here for a second, I got one of my bucket list kites at least to fly because I doubt he'll ever make another one is the fifth Avatar. There are about a half dozen of them in the world. Cuban SUL.
Ah, megalite. Okay.
Yeah, they're like 130 grams or something stupid, and they'll fly in like point 0.5.
That's the ultimate weapon when it comes down to it.
Right, right.
Mm.
Um, yeah, they're the almost all of them were made for one German team, and they're Cuban with flow orange like slashes. And one of them surfaced about a year or two ago and ended up in a collection up there. But yeah, they do not show up very often, and I would love to fly one.
That
That would
wasn't
be
for is that Vatnu or
I
Fun Unlimited? Do you know
I
which team from
don't
Germany?
remember which team it was. No, I just know that they were made for one team, like
Mm.
requested them.
Mm.
And there's a guy who goes by Ion Kite
Hmm.
on social media that got his hands on one.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Iron Kite does good content. I enjoy watching his
he
videos.
does, and a remarkable collection of rare Euro birds.
Mm.
If you scroll through some of his collection, he's got some really wild unicorns. But hey, man, thank you so much for the time. I think we're coming up on the point where people are going to start tuning us out.
Right on.
Um,
Right on.
where can people find you this year? Where are you going
Ah.
to be?
You can find me here at home in Long Beach most of the year. Spending most, kind of refocusing my time and days towards my son at the moment and work and local activity. So
Okay.
you can always find me through kitesaresexy.com. That's the straight shot to me. Flywithintent.com, kiteforge.com, kitelife.com. teamkitelife.com. We got a lot of .coms. But other than that, I will be doing, I'm going to be trying to do almost every month an open fly day here in Long Beach. So
Awesome.
for people that are coming to the Northwest, it's fantastic. We have 26 miles of drive on beach here.
Mm.
And then, of course, the Washington State International Kite Festival. That'll be in August. It's a week-long festival here. And there's a lot of excitement. We talk about renewal and renaissance,
Hmm.
redevelopment, reawakening. There's a lot of energy right now behind Whiskiff. I'm really excited
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
There's
The World
some
Kite
special stuff
Museum.
coming.
Yeah, Long
Special
Beach.
stuff coming to Whiskiff this year for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Find me on the beach is it. Of course, I do lessons. Anything you want to know, and find me on Facebook. Send me a message. You got a question? I'll try and help you find it. I'm certainly accessible.
Well, hey, John, thank you so much for joining me and us. And to all of you, thank you for liking, following, subscribing, sharing, and we will see you out there, Skyrider.
Here, here.